taxed to the max, or Mrs. Iva Lot More? How to not be taxed to the max is this episode, and I'm going to show you how to have a lot more, possibly double or triple what you would have if you are taxed to the max by keeping your money in IRAs and 401ks. My name's Doug Andrew. I've been a tax minimization strategist for 47 years. And I've noticed that most people sort of have a surprise at retirement and they get taxed to the max. And I'm going to share with you a couple of examples to illustrate my point, but they were accumulating their hard-earned money for their future in traditional IRAs or 401ks, tax-deferred accounts. And I would often look at their situation and go, man, were you planning your retirement or Uncle Sam's? And they go, well, what else was there? Well, see, I think so many Americans sort of get duped into putting money into tax-deferred accounts, thinking they're going to be in a lower tax bracket when they retired. And then I watch them get taxed to the max. So one day I was sitting in the radio studio and that just came to my head, taxed to the max versus Mrs. Iva Lot More, or if that is Spanish, that would be more. The producer started laughing when I gave this little example. So I wrote an article, taxed to the max or Mrs. Iva Lot More. And let me illustrate the difference between these two people, because taxed to the max, we will assume has accumulated, let's say, $500,000 into a portfolio of tax-deferred IRAs or 401ks. Sometimes I would see people sort of thump themselves on the chest. Look at me. Look at the money I have in my tax-deferred IRA or 401k. I'm going, well, were you planning your retirement or Uncle Sam's? Well, what do you mean? Well, that's not all your money. People in California, for example, between federal and state income tax, 41 out of 50 states has a state income tax. California is the highest. 40% of that belonged to the government. In other words, the $500,000 wasn't their money. Only $300,000 was their money. The other $200,000 was a permanent tax lien on that tax-deferred IRA or 401k. I don't care if you are in a state that doesn't have a state income tax. The federal tax usually gobbles up at least 20 to 25%. So if you had $500,000, at least $125,000, maybe $150,000 belongs to the government. It's way more than most people were thinking. And so what do most people get talked into doing? Oh, well, then you don't want to pay tax on it. Let's string it out. Let's defer that. Let's continue to let it grow tax deferred until you're 70 and a half was the rule for a long time. Now it's age 72. And then you must start taking out the money based upon the government's life expectancy. That's called LE formula. So at age 72, if you don't withdraw what you're supposed to withdraw based upon the government's distribution formula, the penalty is 50% on top of the tax. 50%. If you're supposed to pull out $100,000 and you don't, the penalty is $50,000 on the $100,000 you should have withdrawn. See, the government wants that money out and taxed before you die, so they can tax it again when you do die, to be honest with you. And so this is the tax to the max scenario. Well, as you continue to take RMDs thinking you're saving tax, I have this software I developed that shows that you will be taxed to the max. Many times people would come to me and they would have, let's say, $500,000, and they would be shocked that if they strung it out, they would end up paying $500,000 or more in tax by stringing it out throughout their life expectancy and their spouses. Do you know now, if you leave behind money to your children, an inherited IRA or 401k, they can't string it out the rest of their life. It has to be all out and taxed within 10 years. See, the government's planning on that tax revenue. People sort of think, by taking the required minimum, I'm saving tax. In this example, if tax to the max had said, well, let it grow until I am, let's say, 72. Let's say he was 62, and the $500,000 doubles to $1 million. Do you know that in most examples, that man or woman will pay about $980,000 in tax by stringing it out if tax rates never go up again. And if you're like me, I think they will. So what's better than taxed to the max? It's Mrs. Iva Lot More. Let me tell you what she did. So what does Mrs. Iva Lot More know or do that Mr. Tax to the Max didn't do? You know, it's so sad because so many Americans, they're not taught how to solve this problem. So Mrs. Iva Lot More maybe read one of my books or came to a live event and realized instead of trying to postpone and delay, because another synonym would be procrastinate. When has procrastinating anything turned out good for you? It never has for me. And so instead of deferring and being taxed to the max, she started at age 59 and a half, because at that point you can access money out of an IRA or 401k without a 10% penalty. And so you don't need the money, you just want to get the money out and the tax is over and done with. She has the same $500,000, let's say. She starts a strategic rollout and pulls out $150,000 a year. She doesn't need to spend it. She takes out $150,000, and due to the tax strategies that we incorporated for her in the example that I give in my book, she pays about $30,000 in tax on the $150,000. Yeah, that's painful, but hey, you're going to pay them sooner or later. So she paid $30,000 a year over 5 years. Now, do you notice? She pulls out $150,000 a year for 5 years. That's a total of $750,000. That's because we increased her rate of return and we were still earning money while we're getting it rolled out. But she got her $750,000 out by only paying $150,000 in tax instead of Mr. Tax to the Max. By the time he finally passed away, him and his spouse, they paid out $980,000 in tax. Now, would you rather pay $150,000 in tax or $980,000 in tax? Mrs. Iva Lot More only paid $150,000. She got the taxes over and done with by age 65. And her money then grew, and at age 70 and a half, she starts income. Do you know her income was double Mr. Tax to the Max because hers is tax-free. Tax to the Max now is pulling it out and paying tax forever on everything he withdraws. In the example in my book, Mrs. Iva Lot More ended up with twice the income in retirement, not outliving her money, and at the end of the day, she's leaving behind 3 times as much money because it's in what I call the laser fund. And so she left behind 3 times as much. I often say, why would you generate this much income and only net this in a traditional IRA or 401k when you could generate this much, twice as much, and never outlive your money? But then at the end of the day, why would you leave behind this in a tax-deferred IRA or 401k? Because those that you leave it to are going to have to get it out of there within 10 years. The government wants their tax on that. And so there's no such thing as a stretch IRA anymore. You must get it out and then have it blossom, because Mrs. Iva Lot More leaves behind 3 times as much, and that frankly reimbursed her many-fold for the $150,000 she paid in tax by getting the money out. The tax is over and done with sooner than later. So the choice is yours. Do you want to be taxed to the max? Or would you like to be Mrs. Iva Lot More? Because she has considerably more, whether she lives for a long time, dies sooner, later, she leaves behind more. I've never met anybody that said, oh, I think I would rather have the tax to the max scenario. No, we want a lot more for us, for those that we leave behind when we pass away. So if this is piquing your interest and you would like to learn more, I would strongly recommend you view this episode. And if you want to learn how to do this and more about strategic rollouts and what are the best ways to empower those you care about and really get your act together in what I call the family bank, make sure that you are able to get a free copy of my book, Entitlement Abolition, or the Laser Fund. And in this episode, you'll be able to see how you can do that. Just pay nominal shipping and handling, and you can learn more about these very powerful concepts and how to be able to leave behind more to those that you care about, but not outlive your money in the process.